We're a full month into fall, but for some reason I'm still knitting everything in fingering weight yarn. I desperately want to cast on things that are like DK, worsted weight, super cozy projects, but I have too many things on the needles right now to feel comfortable casting on something new, so I have my work cut out for me. Hi, I'm Carrie, and welcome to episode 18 of my podcast. I'm very excited to chat about all of my knitting projects today. I'm hoping to have some of these projects wrapped up soon so I can cast on some of those new cozy goodies that I'm very excited to knit. Yes, all of these projects technically are on my fall knitting plans, but for some reason I picked all of the fingering weight projects to cast on first instead of like something, I don't know, more like instant gratification, DK worsted weight. So that's my bad, I guess. It's been about 2 months since I actually had a real podcast episode. Last time I was talking all about my yarn stash organization that I did in September, which I am so glad that I finally did. I've been knitting for nearly 17 years, and this was well overdue, highly necessary. So if you missed that video, be sure to check it out. I have it linked below. And then before that, I was talking all about my fall knitting plans. So it's been a little bit. I feel like I have a lot to talk about, but simultaneously, I thought I would have more done, but I don't. So we'll go ahead and dive in. First, to talk briefly about what I'm wearing. This is Plinth Tee. It's a design that I released last year. This is the long sleeve version. I knit this up in Madelinetosh sock in the whiskey barrel color. This was a deep stash yarn. I had purchased this, I think, in 2013 or 2014, and I had knitted it up last year. So it's very exciting to use up some of that really deep stash yarn. I really want to continue doing that in future projects. I'll give you a quick little look at what this looks like. So here's the overall silhouette. It has like a cute kind of peplum detail here at the bottom. This peplum's knit sideways, and then you pick up stitches around the peplum and then work from the bottom up for the rest of it. It has a just easy drop shoulder and a relatively slim sleeve, so something that you can wear underneath other cardigans and sweaters. So a really nice first layer piece to wear underneath other things. It's a great fall piece or winter if you're wearing a cardigan over it. And it's just a really nice basic. I really like the color. It's, you know, just a nice neutral brown, but it has some like blue running through it, so you could wear it with like denim. I'm wearing it with like a green linen pant here. So just a very nice earthy tone and something I wear a ton when it gets to be fall and winter. So despite the fact that it's been about 2 months since I last recorded a podcast, I only have one finished object. That being said, I do have other things that are like very far along that are going to be finished objects soon. Just nothing actually done, and that's probably why it feels like I have a lot here, but simultaneously not very much, because not very much is finished. So I'm not really sure the order in which I'm going to talk about things today. I guess I will talk about my finished object first, but then everything else we'll kind of see how it goes and what makes sense to talk about. So first things first, I have my one finished object. This is a little striped t-shirt that I knit for my daughter. There is no pattern for this tee. What I did basically is just adapt the numbers from an existing pattern, the Little Plinth Tee pattern, so the little kids version of the top that I'm actually wearing here, and just change it to be top down instead of bottom up. Obviously it doesn't have the peplum thing going on. It's very different. It's just kind of using the same like number and fit structure overall that that pattern uses, but in something else. I am so pleased with how this little top turned out. It definitely fits my daughter now with plenty of room to grow. I will say if I were to do one thing differently next time, I would make the collar just a little bit taller. So I'll come up and show you here. So it has a pretty thin, like maybe 1/2 inch collar, and I feel like I could probably have made that a little taller. The reason I didn't is because I was getting precariously close to running out of yarn. So I just kind of was like, this feels safe in terms of the number of rows to work here. So that's what I did. But if I were to knit it again, I would probably knit a little taller. There's plenty of room for her head to fit through and everything, even without any like opening. So there's no like button at the back. It's just a crew neckline, but definitely is a little bit open on her now. I'm sure it'll feel a little bit I don't know, more proportionate as she gets older and a little bit bigger. So this is worked up in 2 colors of Purl, Soho, Santolina. The primary body color here is like a peachy pink color, and then I have like a darker purpley pink color. I'll be sure to link actual color names in the description below. And I had bought this yarn in the spring from Purl Soho to work a spring project, so like a springy t-shirt, and I had bought 2 balls of the darker color here and then 1 ball of this lighter color, basically with the intention that between the 3 skeins I would be able to get 2 sweaters, one short sleeve all in a solid color, and then a long sleeve using the leftovers from that solid color plus the full skein of the lighter color together in a striped top. So that's what this is here. So technically this is from my spring and summer knitting plans. I finished this up shortly after my last podcast. So this has been off the needles for quite a little while at this point. My daughter has gotten a chance to wear it now that the weather is cooling down. She really likes it. What more could you ask for, you know, your toddler child to enjoy something that you've made for them? I also wanted to note that I have been putting this in the washer and the dryer, and it has been holding up great so far. This is the 3rd project that I've worked in Santolina, and I really, really like this yarn for its easy care. It also feels a little bit easier on the hands compared to other cotton yarns or primarily cotton yarns. This is a blend of like cotton, rayon, and hemp, I think. Some kind of blend that's primarily cotton, and it definitely feels nicer, or like there's slightly more elasticity in the yarn compared to some other cotton yarns that you're kind of more used to working with, the normal cotton feeling. So highly recommend this yarn, especially for something easy care that you want to use for kids. Or easy care that you want to use for yourself. As I do for everything that I knit for my daughter, I make the sleeves extra long with the intention that I can cuff them up for when she's, you know, just barely starting to fit in the size, and as she gets bigger, taller, etc., I can just unroll the cuffs so that there's a little bit more longevity there in terms of the total length of time that she can wear something that I've made for her. This is definitely a fun and fast project, something that I would absolutely knit again, and spoiler alert, I have already started knitting another one of these, and that will be one of my works in progress that I talk about today. So I guess that would be a good transition to talk about said work in progress. So this is my next toddler long sleeve striped tee that I'm working on. Again, no pattern, just using the same numbers that I did for the first one because I didn't really like take notes on that one. I have ended up using the actual sample to count out how many rows I did for like the armhole and how many rows until I start the stripes and all of that, and I'm gonna need to do the same thing for like where's the shaping happening on the sleeve and all of that. So not the worst thing, but maybe should have taken better notes for when I'm just kind of working something off the cuff like I am here. But this new one here is pretty far along. So as soon as my daughter saw me working on the other pink one, she asked me, "Mommy, can you make a blue one too?" So yes, baby, I can of course make a blue one too. And when we were on vacation a couple of months ago, right after that last podcast episode, we had stumbled across a yarn shop and found some blue yarn there to make another one for her. So I will go pull that yarn out. There is not a ton of yarn left here. So I think I maybe have another ball of the light blue, or maybe I don't. Need to figure out if I think I have another ball of the light blue. But I have 2 balls here of Kelborn Woolens Skipper. This is a sport weight yarn, and I bought this at Lilano Fiber in Suttons Bay, Michigan when we were on vacation. My daughter actually picked out the colors, well, the yarn and the colors that I am using here. So this one here is definitely more of a traditional cotton yarn. It feels a lot more like the typical cotton knitting experience that you would expect compared to the Santolina that I was talking about previously. That one has a lot more elasticity. This one really doesn't have elasticity. It's a pretty traditional cotton knitting experience. This is a 100% cotton yarn. It is also a sport weight yarn where the Santolina is labeled as fingering weight. I will say it's on the heavier side of fingering weight. These 2 yarns are probably knitting up at a slightly different gauge. I never swatched for this because it's a kid's sweater, and knowing that it's sport weight, there was a potential for the gauge to be a little bit bigger than what I was getting on the Santolina, and I think that's what's happening here. But given the fact that I'm just like off the cuff knitting this, and it's in a size that she's currently smaller than and will grow into, I was not concerned at all about it being potentially slightly bigger than the pink one. It'll just mean that she'll be able to wear it for slightly longer than the pink one. So All of that to say, gauge is maybe slightly different from the fingering weight or heavy fingering weight of the Santolina, and this is a sport weight cotton yarn. Overall, knitting up like relatively similar gauge. I think the row gauge is a little bit taller, yes, taller. Each stitch takes up more height, so I think this is going to be slightly longer in comparison. You can kind of see the two. Here, let me show you the two. So here are the two next to each other, and you can kind of see that the stripes on this one take up a little bit more vertical space than on this one. They also look just generally a little bit thicker than the stripes on this one over here. That being said, this has gone through the washer and dryer. This hasn't gone through the washer and dryer. So there is a possibility for this to shrink up to be a little bit more like this one. So it remains to be seen exactly how it's going to react. But again, I am absolutely fine with this being a little bit bigger than this one. And since like these aren't going to be like pattern samples or anything like that, if I did eventually decide to turn this kid sweater into a pattern, I would, you know, actually do all of the things that I normally do to write a pattern, as in like do all of the math, make sure that everything is working across a range of sizes, and like once I've done that, then cast on and also like swatch to make sure that all of the math that I'm doing is going to work, and etc., etc. So I would actually, you know, do work to make sure that it works to be a pattern. And if I were to do that, then I would knit another sample that's actually representative of what you would see in the pattern. And these are just kind of, you know, these are like pre-samples, I guess. I haven't decided whether I want to make a pattern for this. This has just kind of been like a fun stockinette project where I just get to work on something relatively easy. My daughter gets to wear it in the end. She's excited about wearing these sweaters. So it's been more of just like a personal knitting satisfaction project rather than like design work. So what else do I have to say about this one? So I'm mostly through the body here. I am just starting the hem. So just like I did on the first one, I'm going to be doing a split hem. So I have worked the split and just started working the front ribbing here. I'll be doing the same thing. And then, you know, moving on to the sleeves, gonna do the same like stripy sleeve situation. And then on this one, as I mentioned on the first one, I was thinking that I probably should have done a slightly taller collar height. I was just worried about running out of yarn. So on this one, I think, you know, assuming I can find the other ball here, I guess I can always order another ball if I, for some reason, can't find the other one, because thinking back, this is absolutely the second ball of yarn. I've not introduced a third ball of yarn yet, and there should be a third ball of this light blue color somewhere floating around. All of that to say, I should have enough yarn to make a taller collar height, so I will do that for this one. With the amount of neck opening that there is, and also like the rib height at other places, I think a slightly taller rib would look more balanced with the rest of it. So that is going to be the plan there, to just go ahead and make that taller rib on this one. So this has been going relatively quickly. That being said, it is still like fingering, like a sport weight yarn, but like I'm basing it off of a fingering weight gauge, 24 stitches per 4 inches. That's kind of like bridging the line between like fingering and sport. But the first one that I knit is in a fingering weight, and this one's a relatively similar weight. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with that. Oh, right, that it's a small gauge, relatively speaking, a small gauge yarn. It's going fast-ish because it's a kid size, but it's not going like super fast because it's still a relatively small gauge. So, you know, definitely making progress. It's really fun to work on. I love working the stripes, but it's still taking kind of a long time because it's kind of a small gauge. And that's kind of the theme of everything that I've been working on, is that it kind of takes a long time because everything's at kind of a small gauge, and I need to fix that. I really want some like cozy, thicker gauge things to work on here soon. All right, what next? I think I'm gonna talk about socks next, because it's another double project situation that I have going on here, as in like 2 projects that are essentially the same pattern. So first I will talk about my half-finished object. This looks like a plain stockinette sock from far away, but when you kind of look up close here, it has a really lovely lateral braid textured detail here at the cuff. So this is a new design that I'm working on. These are called sidewise socks, and that's because you have the lateral braid going sidewise, or yeah, sideways, but you know, like a slightly more interesting name than sideways socks. So it just has a simple lateral braid detail at the cuff on an otherwise plain stockinette vanilla sock, so it just kind of adds a little bit of textural interest, which I have been really loving. Working the lateral braids is super fun, and because there aren't like a ton of them, it's not a ton of extra work compared to like a regular vanilla sock. It's just a little bit of interest at the cuff. That's, you know, a little something extra. And something that I want to show here is, I'll come back up. I should have showed this earlier. You can see that the stockinette behind the lateral braid looks completely consistent. If you've worked lateral braids before, you'll know that like the row after the lateral braid tends to have some stitch elongation. So this uses a technique to resolve that stitch elongation, so you don't have that kind of distorted, more open stitch right after your lateral braid. So everything looks nice and consistent here, and you just kind of have like the embossed look of the lateral braids over the top of the sock here. So last time I had shown the contrast color version, and same exact pattern, it's just using contrast color at the lateral braid and then some striping for the background color. I really love both of them. The solid is definitely just like a classic subtle sock, and I love the pop also that the contrast color brings, a little bit of fun, and also a really great way to use up scrap yarn. So all of the contrast colors on this sock here are with scraps. So the main color is from a just like whole 50-gram ball. I'll see if I can get through the whole pair with just the 50-gram ball. I do have another one that I can use if I need to finish it out, but it would be nice to be able to kind of work these socks with just a 50-gram ball plus, you know, the contrast colors for the cuff and toe. That being said, if you worked a shorter cuff than what I work here, I usually work a 6-inch cuff to, you know, be nice and tall and cozy during the fall and winter time. So that's what I had here. You could absolutely work it shorter, and you would almost definitely be able to get through the sock or like a whole pair of socks with just a 50-gram ball for that contrast color. This was finished last podcast. This was not. This had just barely gotten started. I had to rip it back to kind of figure out the technique to get that cuff with the lateral braid looking nice without the elongation, and also like the spacing of the lateral braids to feel impactful and all of that. So this had been started and now is finished this time. And I've also gotten started on the second socks for both of these. So I'll start off with the one that is farther along here. So this one is just the second sock for my contrast color sidewise socks sample. And I am through the heel, just starting the gusset increases, and it's looking pretty nice there. And here you can kind of see the join at the lateral braid. So with a lateral braid, you kind of end up with like different levels and even more exaggerated levels compared to a regular stripe. So the pattern shares a join adjustment technique to level things out and make things much more consistent at that stripe. This will be at the instep, or I guess you can really wear socks on either foot. But the way I've written the pattern, the second sock has you adjust where you place your heel so that you can wear both of these joints to the instep and have things be a little bit less noticeable. This does get a little bit less noticeable as well once this has been blocked. I've not blocked it yet since it's still in progress, but that is the join section there. And now that I'm in the stockinette portion of this sock, things are moving really, really quickly. I can get through like, you know, a couple of inches of sock in an hour because it's all stockinette now. So that's the beauty of this pattern. You have like the fun detail at the top. It makes you happy when you look at it because it's so fun with contrast color especially, or even just the textural detail in the solid. But then once you're past it, you're just working a stockinette sock, and it's the perfect project to be able to pick up, put down, etc. And then you have a pair of cozy socks at the end of it too. And who doesn't want a pair of hand-knit socks during the winter time? I mean, maybe you don't. Maybe you're one of those people who are like, I can't stand the texture of hand-knit socks. But if you're not one of those people, and I'm not one of those people, I love good wool sock. I live in wool socks over the fall and winter time. So I'm super excited to have both of these pairs to add to my drawer here in the next probably week or so. We are quickly headed towards November. We only have a few days left in October, but I might do a self-imposed delusional challenge of trying to finish both of these socks. Here's the other one that I haven't talked about yet, but I might have a delusional challenge of trying to finish both of these socks by the end of October. We'll see how that goes. I'll report back next time to see if I can make that work. And I guess I can go ahead and start talking about this one now too. This is the second sock for the solid version of Sidewise socks. I'm knitting these in Knit Picks Stroll. Again, it's just nice, classic, solid gray. This doesn't look much different than the other one. It's just not nearly as far along. The pattern for Sidewise socks is going to be releasing soon on Friday, November 7th. As I said, this is a great pattern for kind of a step above vanilla sock. You have that fun lateral braid detail, ability to use some scrap yarns if you're interested in trying to use up some of your sock scraps. This is a perfect project to be able to do that. So if this is sounding like a fun project for you, be sure to sign up for my newsletter list. I always send out a discount code to subscribers. So if you're interested in that, be sure to check out the description box. I've linked my newsletter list there. So I have one last work in progress to share, and this is the one that has been on the needles the longest. And it is a fingering weight sweater. So this is also a design. It's called the double V tee because you have the V at the front and also a shallower V at the back here. I have completed the body and I am working on the first sleeve here. So this is definitely moving slower, partially because it's also a fingering weight project along with everything else that I'm currently knitting, but also because I have all of these other projects on the needles. Therefore, the amount of time and attention I'm devoting to this one is probably less than it should be. But also it's a fingering weight project, and not only that, it's a sweater. And as we're heading into cooler weather, I'm like, I'm not going to get that much wear out of a fingering weight sweater in the wintertime. Meanwhile, I'm here wearing a fingering weight sweater, remembering I love to wear this sweater all winter. So I don't know what my brain is thinking, being like, oh, it's fingering weight, I'm not going to get to wear it this season, when this is literally one of the things that I wear the most in the wintertime is I want more fingering weight sweaters because they're so great for layering. When you're inside, sometimes the temperature can be a little bit variable. It's too hot to be wearing a sweater when the heat kicks in and all of that. So something lighter weight like fingering can be the perfect option to stay comfortable. And when the temperature does drop a little bit further, because keeping a consistently comfortable temperature inside is always a challenge. Up here, it's always a little bit colder than it is downstairs or in my office. Sometimes it's blazing hot and other times it's freezing cold. All of that to say, fingering weight sweater is your base layer, and then a heavier weight cardigan on top is kind of the perfect combination so that you will be comfortable pretty much no matter what in the cooler weather. And yeah, I don't know why my brain is thinking I'm not going to be able to wear this, because I'm absolutely going to be able to wear this, and I'm going to be able to wear it a lot too. So yeah, I need to work on this more. So I'll go ahead and try this on so I can share the progress with you on body, and you can kind of check out the fit. The way I've designed the fit is to be relatively similar to the fit of the top that I'm wearing here. So it has kind of a boxy body, a slimmer sleeve, though this one doesn't have a peplum. It just has a straight hem with a side vent situation going on, which will be better demonstrated on me versus on this hanger. All right, so here is my double V tee. I really love the neckline on this. This will close up a little bit once I add the I-cord trim onto it, but it's looking really lovely right now. And I have most of a sleeve complete. I feel like the other thing that's kind of prevented me from working on this is I'm trying to decide what I want to do about the lower portion of the sleeve. So the short sleeve version that I made of this just has lateral braid detailing at the cuff sleeve opening area here, and knowing that this is a long sleeve, I kind of have a couple of options. I can either do a taller cuff for the long sleeve, sort of how I have the lateral braid detailing here at the hems, so I could kind of match that up and do a lateral braid cuff. Or alternately, I could do a more minimal finish. And honestly, I feel like I'm leaning towards a more minimal finish just because you do have the lateral braid detail here at the bottom. And I feel like it might look, I don't know, chunkier than I want if I were to also do a full cuff of lateral braiding at the bottom of the sleeve. So I think what I might do is one row of lateral braid and then one row of I-cord, so just a little bit more of a minimal finish at the long sleeve cuff. I might also just include both options in the pattern, so you can decide whether you want a taller cuff or a more minimal finish. I'll probably include both in the pattern because it's not that much more work to include the options, and then you get to decide what your aesthetic is. But I have to decide what I want to do on my sample here. So I'll come a little bit closer so you can see the details. There's lateral braid detailing at the shoulder, and this is leveraging that elongated stitch in between the lateral braids to kind of create an almost lacy effect. It's not like super open and lacy, but you know, more open than a standard stockinette fabric for a nice detail there. And then you have the shallower V at the back as well. And the construction for this is top down drop shoulder. So you start off with the lateral braid section at the back, you work the back V neckline, and then the other side, work down to the bottom of the armhole, then you pick up stitches, start the front. And these are just worked with short rows on both sides. This isn't the construction that has like the increases making the panel bigger. It's just you cast on the width that you need and then work short rows to get your shoulder slope depth. And then again, it has a relatively slim sleeve here. And also the other thing is the shoulder point here is extended farther than the bust circumference. So there's a little bit of shaping at the underarm to have like a nice, you know, true drop at the shoulder, but then have a slightly slimmer fit through the body here. So once I block this, this should loosen up just a little bit to give me the tiniest bit of ease. Right now, it's like, you know, pretty slim. It's not uncomfortable or anything. It's just like approximately the same dimension as my actual arms. My arms are generally slightly bigger than the rest of my body dimensions in comparison, thanks to years of swimming, weightlifting, and now lifting a toddler. So I always have slightly bigger arms than like a size chart suggests that I quote unquote should have for the rest of my body dimensions. All of that to say, this will block out just a little bit looser than what it currently is. It's not going to be loose. It's still going to be like slim and fitted, which is what I'm going for these kind of first layer items. That's why it's called a tee. You know, it's intended to be a first layer item and not something that you're wearing something else underneath. You know, this is your long sleeve tee equivalent, just hand it. You can't really see the hem detail that well because it's, you know, the dark color here, but there's a split detail at the hem. This has not been blocked, so it's kind of curling right now, and I am hoping that blocking it will reduce the amount of curl because I don't know if you can see, but it kind of like wings up here at the side. So the idea for this pattern was to have like, again, kind of like different hem options. So the short sleeve version that I worked has a bit of a swingier body, and also the hem is just like fully worked in the round. This one is a straighter body and the hem is a split hem to, you know, still have some ease of movement around the hips. That being said, if it does end up still winging a lot in a way that I'm like not super into, I might just stitch it up and only include the option for the hem in the round and just kind of make a note that I made this adjustment here on this sample. So we'll see how it goes. I do think that it will relax somewhat. I'm just hoping that it relaxes like enough for me to feel satisfied with, because I don't want to pull this out and like re-knit all of the lateral braids again, because they do take a while and there's quite a number of rows of lateral braid. So we'll see how this goes. Maybe the next step, I'll just like block this on the needles, then I'll be able to see like how this sleeve fits too, and see how the body relaxes with that kind of curling that we're getting at the split hem here. I have one last thing to talk about, and that is swatches. So while all of my projects are like lightweight yarns, I did actually cast on swatches for a heavier weight project. So these are in a DK weight yarn. Here is the yarn here. It is Knit Picks You and Billy, which is a wool and mohair blend. And here are the two swatches that I knit. These are both the same stitch pattern, just in different needle sizes. So this first one here, this is a US 6, and this one here is a US 7. So here they are side by side, and I think you can actually kind of see what I'm about to talk about in the camera here. So again, this is the 6 and this is the 7, and I cast on with the 6 first because that is the needle size that I'd used for my other project. This is going to be for a rock mill cardigan, which is an unreleased design that I'm going to be knitting a second version of. And I felt that the stitches here just like didn't pop enough, if that makes sense, or like everything looked too even. Like the different sections kind of all had the same weight. Whereas in this swatch here, I feel like you're getting more credit for the vertical lines of the broken ribs. All right, so this one is the US 6, and I feel like the visual balance between the garter and the broken rib stripes is like fine-ish, but it seems like the broken rib doesn't really stand out as much as I would expect from the garter section. And then when you compare that to the US 7 swatch here, I feel like you get a lot more vertical definition. Like you can really kind of see that those vertical lines are traveling up between the garter stripes. So it kind of feels more like bigger check as opposed to a small grid, I guess. So again, the top here is the US 6, the bottom is the US 7, and I feel like there's just a little bit more openness in that stitch pattern where you get a little bit better credit for the stitch pattern changing between the broken rib and the garter stripe. So the US 7 is going to be what I go with for my project needle, and that is a good thing because it also exactly matches the gauge that I'm going for. This one was a little bit tight, but I was like, maybe I can just get a little bit aggressive with the blocking so that, you know, it ends up being what I need it to be, but this is just kind of like already there with no need for aggressive blocking. I will say it's going to be really interesting to see the difference between this fabric here and my original sample. I'm going to go grab the other swatch from my first cardigan to show you what I'm talking about. So here is my original swatch, and this is worked in a sport weight yarn, and I think the sport weight yarn is a 3-ply plus a mohair. So it's like sport plus mohair equals DK, and then this is just a straight DK, but these are like very different. These are very different structures. So you can kind of see that this one's a lot floppier compared to this one. This one has like a lot of like, I don't know, like roundness, more structure. It like wiggles around a lot less compared to this one. And that totally makes sense. This yarn here is only a 2-ply. And I would say that like, if I kind of move out of the way from behind it, you can see a little bit through the stitches here. There's like a little bit of openness. Whereas with this one, you definitely cannot see through the fabric at all. So this is going to be a much lighter, drapier cardigan in comparison to the original one that I made. I absolutely love wearing the original. It definitely feels like cozy, sturdy, all of the things. So this one's just going to be like a different wearing experience. This one's going to be like slipping into a cloud almost, I feel like. So I'm very curious to see how that will affect like the overall drape and silhouette despite things being at the exact same gauge. The fabric is definitely reacting quite differently. I do think that it's going to be a beautiful cardigan either way. So for this one, I've already made the cardigan. I know it's a beautiful cardigan that I love to wear. So I feel like this one is just going to be so lovely and cozy to have something that is oversized but a little bit drapey and feel also a lot lighter weight. This is so much lighter weight in comparison to this one. This one feels a little bit heavier. So I am really excited to see the comparison between the two, and I think that this will still make an absolutely beautiful cardigan that I love to wear. So that is the story with these swatches here. I am absolutely using these for motivation right now because I desperately want to cast on something cozy and heavier weight than all of these lightweight fingering sport projects that I have been working on. So I've just been kind of looking at these, picking them up, admiring the lovely fabric, dreaming about the lovely sweater that, well, I guess not the swatch, but you know, this yarn is going to turn into an absolutely lovely sweater. So definitely some much needed motivation. As I said, I do kind of have like I don't know, a delusional goal of finishing both of these socks by the end of October, which is in like just a few days. So we'll see if that happens, but it would mean that I am clearing off 2 projects off of my needles, and then I would only have 2 other projects that are still currently on my needles. The kid sweaters go so fast, so I could get that off too, and then maybe I could cast this on. So definitely using these as motivation to keep going on these projects. They're all like in a, you know, easy stockinette stage, so I really should be able to get through these. That means that maybe I'll have 4 finished objects next time, which would be very exciting for me. That is everything that I have to share today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, I would greatly appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe, as it'll help make sure that you see my future videos as well and helps other knitters find my channel. If you'd like to find me on other places on the internet, I am Carrie Knits on Ravelry and Instagram, and I will see you next time.